Hello and welcome to Connect. I'm your host, Randy Shabilo. On today's show, we'll have the CEO for the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, Chris Guerrette. And as always, we'd like to connect with you. Email us at rtvsaskatoon@rci.rogers.com. Find us on Facebook at ConnectYXE and catch past interviews on our YouTube channel. Saskatoon's real estate market continues to thrive. We have Chris Guerrette with us from the Saskatoon Realtors Association. Thanks for coming to the studio.
Thanks, Randy.
I want to talk about some of the good things that have happened, let's say 2025, some of the stats. We've heard some different numbers, but having you here, take us through the past year of numbers that you've seen.
All good things, Randy. Let's start with that. 2025 for the province has been the second strongest year on record. And when I say strong, I mean the second highest amount of sales in our province in our history. So that's indicative that the economy is still performing quite well in my mind, despite the headwinds that we have nationally and internationally. But we still struggle a little bit with our inventory. We've seen more inventory come on market, but it's actually not created any kind of relief so far in terms of how we calculate what's available because the demand is just so strong. And that is very closely replicated in the city of Saskatoon. There's still very strong demand in the city of Saskatoon, and we're seeing that with the inventory available, and of course, second highest year of sales on record.
And the key thing I just picked up on, you said Saskatchewan, not just Saskatoon. Do we see us punching above our weight, if you will, for Regina, or if we look east and west, how do we fit in the pack?
That's part of my job, is looking at how we perform nationally, because that's part of the story, right? The higher level story of housing is what's happening here in Saskatchewan. Is it different than anywhere else? Is that normal? Is that okay? How are we doing? And so when I do that, I can see that for 2025, we really have had an exceptional year. And I use exceptional because if you compare to provinces like British Columbia, Alberta, even Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Manitoba, we have outperformed. You know, the headlines that I read in early January for places like Calgary, places like Vancouver, show that the demand has really diminished greatly. Average numbers are diminishing greatly. They're calling it a year of an adjustment to see where things land. In Saskatchewan, I mean, the headline that we have is it's the second highest, strongest year on record. So I also struggle a little bit with that because, you know, our headline, we have to, as you say, what's the good news? We have to do a better job at shouting it at the rooftops because, as you know, the large banks, CMHC, the larger think tanks that evaluate local markets kind of just take Saskatchewan and Manitoba and lump it together. And I understand maybe our population's not that strong or not that large, I should say. Yeah. But at the same time, we have such a different story in Saskatchewan, and I think that's why I think groups like us have a stronger responsibility to shout it to the rooftops that we've had a really strong year, an exceptional year in Saskatchewan, and that's a story.
How does it transform then if we look into the upcoming year? We have interest rates and people's mortgages 4 and 5 years ago that are transitioning. Do we see some inventory coming up? We have builds and we have, I guess, vacancies that will come with people moving. Take us into the affordability factor for how does that work for anyone who needs a place and who's looking at interest rates and trying to find all of that.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's unbox the interest rate conversation a little bit more. Of course, it's good news for affordability when you say interest rates going down. It takes a little bit for that to translate back down to mortgages and to those offers from banks. But of course, that's good news for the affordability on that side, especially for individuals who are just waiting to either renew their mortgage or make a move in real estate, but they're locked into a certain percentage. They're just waiting for that to come down so that they can pivot themselves. So of course, great news. However, for places like Saskatchewan, when the market's really tough's not the right word. It's resilient in terms of there's a lot of demand out there. Well, when you bring down that interest rate, more people come to the market. You're adding more demand to a market that already has a lot of demand. So then you're putting more pressure on the inventory. And what does that do with the supply and demand? it puts upward pressure on prices. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 for us at this moment.
I think with the diversity of industries, and we're seeing some movement federally as well, and that's helping. If we look at, I have some children that just bought their homes this past year or so.
Congratulations.
And it's a wonderful feeling as a parent. And watching them go through that on their own, I wouldn't say a bidding war, but it was definitely a competitive purchasing
environment.
process.
That's
there
right.
We go. Talk a bit about that. How is that translating with your association, and what are you hearing?
Yeah, I don't like that verbiage, bidding war, but that's what people refer to. And I think it's important to understand why that process is in place when we talk about bidding wars, or for those who are watching, when they see on realtor.ca that it's a presentation of offers through Form 917. So those who are currently looking to purchase know that language very well. So the bidding war refers to the presentation of offer strategy. And that was created over 20 years ago during a market that was similar to what we had experienced in 2025, when there's not enough inventory for the demand. So the listings are actually moving almost too fast, because it's not allowing individuals the time buyers that is, the time to take a look at the house, think about it, do their own due diligence. This is a significant purchase for most people. And so when the market is just that much under pressure, listings are moving too quickly, forcing individuals to make decisions too fast. And then maybe they're not being comfortable with that, and they've just signed a pretty big engagement to buy a house, and now they're maybe regretting it. Maybe they didn't have the chance to do an inspection. Maybe they didn't, there's all those questions. So the presentation of offer strategy was actually a strategy to allow the market to breathe a little bit when it's under pressure that way. So it's saying, for this listing, what we're doing is we're not looking at any offers for the next week. But on, let's just say, Sunday at 5 p.m., that's when we will look at the offers. So it allows a moment, however time the seller wants, 3 days, a week, whatever they want. Yep. But it's being very transparent with that and saying, we're putting our property out for anybody to come see, and we will only take offers and view them at X time. And so that allows the market to breathe a little bit. It allows buyers to take the time that they require, even though they feel under pressure. And you know what? It's still an uncomfortable situation, but it's definitely better than not having that breathing room. And so we at the association took that a step further, because that process only really works well if you're transparent and upfront about it. And if you're giving the impression that you're not, then it doesn't work. So we put that out on realtor.ca. So, and we were the only province to do so. So if there is a strategy of a presentation of offers, you're seeing that on the listing. Okay. It's very transparent, and everybody has the same information equally.
What if I thought, you know what, I'll maybe try and get this offer in Friday if you take my offer ahead of the Sunday 5 o'clock? Is there a way that can happen?
And that's a really good question, because that's a question that comes up often. There is a process that is baked into the regulation and a document that's signed, so it is legal, that it's a contractual obligation between instructions that the realtor has received from their client that they will only present offers at a certain time and not earlier. So there is a very clear understanding between the client and the agent. And so you can try to do it, but there's already an understanding in place, signed between that client and the agent.
Yeah, I guess if you're going to play baseball, you can't start on first base. You have to play by the rules, and as long as everybody knows, you're saying, that transparency.
But that's a really good point, because when you're playing at baseball, there's very clear rules, and everybody's participating fairly. There's the same implication with the MLS system. The foundation of the MLS system is that it is an open market, that everybody must abide by the same rules, because that's providing the strongest opportunity for the public to represent their property or to access the market.
And your organization is representing the realtors.
That's right.
Right. How many would you have in the membership?
Well,
we're
currently sitting at about 1,800. And, I often get comments of, oh, that's a lot, or that's not a lot. And actually, in Saskatchewan, we've kind of always maintained a pretty solid, consistent growth of 2 to 4% growth every year, which is respectable. But compared to the population that we serve, we're actually the province that has the least amount of realtors. So our realtors are very busy, which is a good thing. That means the business and their clientele is keeping them very busy. But another fun fact for you, there are some points during the year, Randy, where there are less listings than realtors in this province, and that's not a comfortable place.
The only way to really deal with that, I guess, is to build more, or, discussion we've had over the last little while. If I was to look at the age of and demographics of our province, and many of us are moving on, is there downsizing or reconfiguring of homes that you see with what's being offered on the market?
Yeah, and that's a trend that we're seeing across the country that CMHC has tracked. It's a newer trend, although it's been around for a little bit now, where the older generation is staying in their home longer. They like where they live, they like their neighborhood. It's the home where they maybe raise their family, and individuals are staying in place longer. They're not downsizing as quickly as we used to see. And so that has an impact on that housing continuum and how quickly or when properties become available to list. So absolutely, people are aging in place longer.
Are we seeing new builds with some incentives for either secondary suites or some configuration that would allow maybe another stream of income if there are newcomers or young people moving in?
Yeah, absolutely. The provincial government during the last budget brought in what they call a secondary suite incentive. And it was a way to diversify, from our perspective anyways, a way to diversify the housing continuum without always building the same type, right? We need apartments, we need more inventory, but this was a way to add gentle density in any kind of neighborhood where you could have a secondary suite where you currently live in the property that you own. And up to $35,000 of rebates. And so it helps the inventory question and the gentle density, but at the same time, it helps the affordability crunch that maybe many are feeling. If they were considering selling because of affordability, well, by adding a suite, you're also adding revenue there. So it had two really great wins. Really great to see that it was a good program. It's been significantly oversubscribed. We certainly hope to see that program continue because when we do track inventory, we track housing market housing, and we track construction permits. We haven't been tracking this little piece, but it's been, if I can say, on fire in our largest centers, Regina and Saskatoon, and actually helping with that inventory crunch.
Do you see us, I say competing, we don't price houses compared to Calgary or Edmonton as an example, but if I look at my job, I had to transfer or move, or my wife lost her job, or we had moved back for family reasons. Do you see us competitive in that nature, where I could sell my house for about $400,000 or $500,000 in Calgary and buy something comparable here, or are we quite a bit of a spread?
That is Saskatchewan's competitive edge, and it's not just me saying it. If you take a look at the recent report from RBC, I think it was June or July 2025, it listed Saskatchewan as the most affordable place to call home for home ownership relative to household income. So it's not, when we say affordability, we can't just say price point. We have to also talk about how do you afford that, and that's relative to your household income. So Regina was first, and Saskatoon was third. So, I mean, really, that is our competitive edge. Yes, there's an affordability crunch, but when we take a look at the other side, we also have to be thankful that when we compete with other provinces, we're doing a really good job when it comes to home ownership and affordability.
Would you say that going forward in the next 6 to 8 months here into the fall of 26, do you see any, politically we're very stable, I would say, municipally, provincially, still 3 years away for an election there, federally seeming to be on track. That kind of stability built into the market, do you see just a need for more housing inventory being built, or some rental or a balance? What would you say the next 2-3 quarters looks like for us here?
Well, I think you're bringing up a good point that housing and real estate is very much impacted by government and policies and politics. Absolutely. And so mostly municipal, but absolutely all layers of government. But I think what we've seen in 2025 particularly is it can also be impacted by some national and international politics as well, from tariff threats to how do we protect our own economy and our own independence. And housing will feel that absolutely, because housing is also, in my mind, a little bit of an indicator on how people are feeling and how they trust the economy and the market. Because when you're committing to a mortgage and you're committing to buying that home, you're committing to setting down roots in that community, and you're saying, yeah, I feel secure enough financially that I can do this and I want to do this and I'm committing. And so it's an indication. Home ownership rates are 100% an indication to me on how are we doing as a community, as a province. And I personally think that politicians should be looking at home ownership rates as an index and, how are we doing here economically? Because if we're bringing in good employers, good investment, things are stable and people want to stay, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to buy a home.
And everything that goes in it.
And everything that goes in it. Can I give you a fun fact? For
Sure.
every home that's purchased or every real estate transaction that there is, that's an additional $54,000 back into the local economy. $54,000 of the local economy. And the real estate market on its own, only on the residential side, I'm not even talking about commercial and farm, adds $280 million in tax revenues for our governments. So it's significant.
That's quite impressive. I
think so.
I didn't know that. Thank you so much for shedding light on that. I wish you the best of success, and thank you to all the realtors out there who are slugging it out and moving the properties for us.
I will pass on the message.
That's our show for today. I'd like to thank our guest, Chris Guerrette. I'm your host, Randy Shabilo. We'll see you next time on Connect.